Gettysburg Museum of History Studios.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today, I have a special guest with me. She is Heather Lowe, and she is the wife of Andrew Prine, who you know as General Garnett in the movie Gettysburg. And we're going to talk about the late Andrew today. Hello, Heather. Thanks for coming and doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate this. So we've been doing some talking for the last hour or so, and you had some pretty interesting stories. We were talking with Bo Brinkman, and we're going to bring him in later. But first, I want to talk about Andrew.
Great.
The man.
The man.
And
the legend.
The legend, yes. How did his life begin? Where was he born?
He was born in Jennings, Florida.
Okay.
But it's right on the Georgia border. So
Okay.
I think his bedroom was in Georgia and the kitchen was in Florida.
Okay.
Right on the Swanee River.
What did he consider himself?
You know, I think he considered himself a Floridian because he then went to high school in Miami and then received a scholarship to the University of Miami.
Okay.
And for acting, for drama. And so I think he probably considered himself a Floridian.
What year are we talking now? When was he born?
He was born in 1936 on
36.
Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, on Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day.
Okay. What a gift.
Right?
Yeah.
And he had a big heart. So.
Yeah. Oh, well, good. Okay. So he goes to school for acting. And what does he do? Move to California after that? Or how does that work?
No. So at that time in Florida, they had a lot of actors come from Hollywood. So he would work with actors like Steve Cochran, people from New York. He met his future acting coach, Mary White, who was married to David White, and they said, why don't you come to New York? And so he was going to college on a scholarship, but also getting paid as a semi-professional actor working with Hollywood people.
Okay.
And so still doing day jobs like cleaning, engines for Pan Am, and cobbled together some money, and his father gave him a ticket. His father was a railroad man,
right,
and got him a ticket to go to New York. And he only knew one person who became his acting coach, and didn't know anybody. He didn't even know that Manhattan was an island. He said, he
really?
had no idea.
That's got to be scary to go from. Was it like a rural area that he grew up in?
Very rural.
Yeah.
It was
so
tobacco.
To go from that to Manhattan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
big.
I grew up just outside of Manhattan, and I didn't like going to Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in the suburbs, and I was like, nah.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with that.
He was ready. He was so ready. He knew what he wanted. He tells a story where his mother was with his stepfather, and as a young man, they took him to see Showboat.
Okay.
And he was watching the show, and when they left, they were out in the parking lot, and he said, I know what I want to do. I want to be an actor. And of course, being parents, they went, oh, okay, thank you.
Right.
No chance in hell, right?
Mr. Head in the Clouds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he knew it. And he was a very fine actor from the get-go.
Yeah.
He was a serious actor. He didn't think, oh, I'm all that. He knew he had to study. He knew that he had to hunker down. And he had a very thick Southern accent. So when he went to New York, he worked with a dialect coach.
Okay.
Like a speech therapist.
To
get rid of it.
Yeah. And then later he's going to do movies where he's probably going to have to use it again.
He did. But, everyone would say, I was in the kitchen and I had the TV set on and I knew his voice.
He had a great voice.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Really nice and deep. Yeah.
He did.
So what was his first paid acting gig like that was a big deal for him?
Well, as I said, he was working with these actors, but not getting paid huge.
Right.
And he did go to Broadway and did Le Comrade Angel. He played Thomas Wolfe.
Okay.
He replaced Anthony Perkins.
Okay.
And people go, well, but he had Ed Begley Sr. in the production, Miriam Hopkins, who had worked silent films, and he got along with her very well.
Huh.
And she was not in the original production, so the play opened, and I said to Andrew, they'd read so many guys, and Andrew was the last one. They were like down to nobody. And there he was, tall, lanky, the right look, and had the chops to do it. And he got the part.
That's interesting, Ed Begley Sr., because I know Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I don't know him, but I know who he is. And I always wondered, was the senior famous? And I never looked into it, but now I guess apparently he had a career too.
And they did, Andrew and he did summer stock, where they would go up through New England and do things. So it wasn't just that they were on Broadway together. They had friendship and a career after that as well.
So theater was his home.
For sure. And he thought that that's where he would stay. But he got the movie, The Miracle Worker.
Oh.
And he was so fabulous in that. And the funny thing is, I saw that when I was a child.
So did I.
Right? And I thought, that guy is really mean to Patty Duke. I don't like him, right? And I went, oh. And everybody later on was going, no, he wasn't really mean. But I thought as a child that he was mean.
Sure.
Now, the funny thing is, later we got married. We were in my hometown, which is a college town. And I said to him, do you know the first time I ever saw you? And he said, yeah, at that place. And I said, no, up there. And so it was like Purple Rose of Cairo, where the guy comes off the screen, right?
Right,
and little did I dream that the guy in that was going to be my future husband.
Yeah, that's so strange.
Yeah.
Hey, great, because you're a little girl and you're thinking, oh, that's mean man.
Mean man,
and
mean
then,
guy.
Yeah, and then you find out that's just not how it works, and you marry the guy.
I know.
How did you guys meet?
It's an interesting story. I had been in the hospital, and it was a girlfriend's birthday, and a few blocks away was a restaurant called Dan Tana's.
Okay.
And so there was a surprise birthday party for this friend, and this other friend said, don't go. And I said, well, I'm going to go. I'm just going to stay for an hour. So I was waiting at the table, and I see this guy with this white dinner jacket come around the corner. And I looked at him, I went, no. But I didn't know he was going to sit with us.
Okay.
And he sat right next to me. And all night long, he almost dipped his elbow into every sauce that was on the table. And I think I made a comment of, anyone who would date me, it would be the 50s all over again. And he said the 50s were good.
So, what did you mean by that? Did you mean like...
Because it meant like I wasn't going to have sex with anybody because I just got out of the hospital and, no romance. And I wasn't even thinking of him like in those terms.
Sure.
It was just a group of girlfriends and friends. And
Right.
It was just chatter.
Yeah.
And little did I know, I was said, I need to go. And he was kicking my friend under the table. And he said, I'll drive her home. And I said, no, Lynn's going to drive me home. And I'm kicking her under the table. And so finally she moved her legs. She said, you take her home. And so he did. But when we got out to the valet, he was very nervous. And he said, the car that is coming is not my car. He said, I have a Porsche. And so I looked at him and I went, oh, sure you do. And he goes, no, I really do. I've got a Porsche. It's in the shop. And he's over-explaining, right?
Right.
And so he takes me home, comes back to the restaurant, and he said, I've met Miss Wright. So my girlfriends called me up that night, and he said he met Miss Wright. And I said, how dare him say something like that? And they went, oh, yeah, well, it's Andrew Prine. Well, 3 days later, my friend calls and says, I'm sending you a check. I said, what? I'm sending you a check. I had to. I said, what are you talking about? She said, him. Who? Andrew Prine. What are you talking? 5 people had my phone number. I was very private. Mm-hmm. And she knew that no one had my phone. And she said, I gave him the number because he said, I know where she lives, and I'm going to go over there, and she could be in hair curlers. But I'm going to have 5 minutes with her. And if she says no, then it's no, but I'm going to have time with that girl.
Wow.
And so I said, oh, that's okay. I know how to handle him. Well, we went out. This was like in October. And by February 14th, we were married. 3 months later.
So another Valentine's Day event.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, when he asked me, I knew. I had been asked before, but I never was married and I never, wanted anybody. Not wanted anybody, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
I never wanted to marry anybody.
This was a May-December relationship, right?
You mean he was older?
Older, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant May, like, and we left each other in December. Like, no. No, the marriage lasted 36 years, which was great. But he was an older man. But I happen to like older men, so I'm very
That works
lucky.
out then.
It continues to work out in my life because now I'm looking for a guy who's 100. So if anybody knows anybody out there, you know.
Did you have children?
No. On around the second or third date, we were at dinner. And he was very honest. He said, I don't want to have children. I said, me neither. And he said, you don't like children? And I said, oh, I like them like fried or something. You know? And we had that kind of crazy sense of humor.
Sick sense of humor, yeah.
Well, Wolfgang's had just opened their restaurant on Sunset.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, when you're dating and if you click, you do things. And he and I had the same kind of sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I leaned in and I said, do you want to see me clear the table? And he said, you want to see me clear the room?
So one-upping each other.
Yeah.
What was his sense of humor like? I remember at the 25th anniversary, like I was telling you before, I didn't actually get to meet him, but you guys came to the dinner at the Dobbin house, and I just observed, first of all, the room lit up when he walked in, because you guys were late, and everybody was there, and he walks in, and there was Andy, and they're like clapping and getting up and saying hello to him and everything, and I was like, wow. And he just kind of, for a while at least, took over the conversation as I remember it, and just had the room.
Yeah.
Like it was, I'm assuming he was that kind of guy. It wasn't just because these people knew him. Like he walks into a room and it's his room.
Andrew, he was well read. He read a lot. He was educated. He always looked up words, you know, as a young man, and had a thick dictionary. And I would say, what is this? And he had a definition. But he was a very wise person. He had lived a life of some tragedy with his mother. He was abandoned as a child, literally abandoned, left on the back porch by his mother, saying the suitcase is there and would you go get it? And she drove away and left him, abandoned him.
Oh, my God.
It would be child abuse today.
No kidding.
I'm not joking.
And whose porch was it?
It was their home, but he didn't know that his parents were getting a divorce. And his father was a train conductor. And so he was gone. And so Andrew waited on that porch. He thought she would realize that he was on the porch and come back when she had to get gas. And it's so tragic. It
is.
It's so tragic. It really affected his, childhood and the way he saw things. And finally, his grandmother got wind that because he got himself to school, he would open cans of food. Again, you're in the South.
Yeah.
You're in a certain period in the South. And it wasn't like today where you just run over to the neighbor and say, hey, blah, blah, blah. It was a rural South.
Right.
And so he then became self-reliant at a very early age of like 7 years old. And so I think that must have colored his independence, but him knowing that it's going to be him.
Probably his attitude toward wanting to have kids, too. Probably thought, like, I might repeat that. I'm not going to do that to somebody.
Yeah, or just, I don't know what his, I mean, honestly, I don't know that we even got that deep about it. It was just like, I like you, do you like me? It's like, no. No.
Yeah.
So we moved on. Once we decided, it was like, yeah, okay. I mean, but he was like the kind of guy that he had a wacky sense of humor.
Yeah. But wait. Before we get into a sense of humor, I know that was the original question, but now you brought something else up. So how did you mentioned his grandmother.
Yes.
She realized, how long was he standing on that porch before any adult?
Oh, he was like 2 weeks staying in that house by himself and taking himself to school. And the people at school did not know because he would comb his hair and have his lessons. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
I would have been like, I have no school. Like I wouldn't have gone to school. But how old is he at this time?
7.
7?
Yeah. He's going on 8 years old.
Oh my God, what a sad story that is.
It's incredible sad.
So then his grandmother finally, so his dad's away working.
Correct. His father doesn't know that his mother just abandoned him. And so he then went and stayed with his grandmother and grandfather, who were quite elderly at that time.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, they were kind of that Southern thing with, you know, not effusive, you know, just sort of stoic.
Right.
And, but he persevered. He persevered.
And then when his father found out, he went back with his father.
His father came and got him, and Andrew told the story. I mean, he loved his father, and he said, and the thing that he would do is he would open these beans and franks, and it was the most delicious food I ever had, you know. And then when his father would leave, he'd take him back over to his grandmother's, but he would always wait to hear for that car, you know, to see about when his dad was picking him up. And of course, it was his father who arranged for the train ticket for him to go on to New York. So
okay, so his dad was a good guy.
Yes, his dad was a solid man.
Good.
He was a man who was a merchant marine in World War II. But coming back, he tried to start a pharmacy. He was always searching for the next thing. They owned a dry goods store where they showed movies. And Andrew would get on the bus and go to the distribution company in Valdosta and pick up the cans of film. And so that's sort of how he fell in love with movies. He fell in love with Buck Jones and watched these guys, and they would run the film, you know, a couple of times a day and have a little sandwich place on the side.
Wow. Okay, sense of humor now. So I would imagine with that story there that happened to you at 7 years old and learning to take care of yourself and stuff, to deal with the pain, you have to develop a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Am I right? Do you think that's what?
I think it was. I mean, and his sense of humor was sophisticated. It wasn't dumb. You know, it wasn't dumb sense of humor.
No, it's smart. Yeah.
It was a very savvy sense of humor, or you know, a physical sense of humor. Like at the time when we were living in L.A., Ted Turner owned the Atlanta Braves.
Okay.
And so they were always, you know, getting into the World Series. And so we had this big table and big TV, and we were going to watch the World Series. And so I bring the food in, I sit down and I look over, and Andrew's got these little clip-on, you know, baseball cap earrings that have the Atlanta Braves. And he's just sitting there with these earrings on. I mean, it's just like one of these crazy things where you look over and it's like, what do you do?
Right, and he's nonchalant about it, right?
Nonchalant.
He's not, yeah.
I mean, and it's just, I mean, you just little small things that just were so out of character because, first of all, he was so manly, you know, and for him to wear earrings, of course, was absurd.
Right, which is why it's funny.
But he did do a lot of comedy. He did Weird Science, and he played the dad, but they gave him parts where it was really wacky, where he dressed as a woman because the boys were seeing him through some kind of tunnel vision.
Oh, yeah.
And then he dressed as a waitress. And I mean, these are things to look on YouTube and see if you can find them because he's so funny.
I'm going to have to watch these movies again because I've seen The Miracle Worker.
Yeah.
In school, because we were reading about Helen Keller.
Right.
So we watched the movie. And then Weird Science, of course, I saw when I was a kid.
Right.
But my introduction to him was Gettysburg.
Sure.
And I feel like, was he in a John Wayne movie?
Yes.
Which one?
He was in Chisholm with John Wayne.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was watching that a couple of years ago, and this guy, I'm like, this guy looks familiar. And then I looked up the credits, and there he was.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm like, you know, it's funny how our perception of things is, because when you first see a movie like Gettysburg, for example, which was a huge deal to me. I love this movie.
Right.
And I watched it incessantly, drove everybody in the house nuts. And, you know, but a lot of these guys, this is the first time I'm seeing them in anything. And so to me, even though they had a 20, 30, 40-year career leading up to it, maybe, you know, this is the first time I'm seeing them. And then to discover these guys existed long before your awareness of them, you know, and it's kind of cool because it's like, well, now I get to watch all these other movies to see these people and what they do and everything like that. So I'm going to have to do a lot of
I got to tell you something. It's true for me, too. Yeah. I haven't seen everything he's done. People
still?
No, still. So
he didn't make you sit down and watch everything? Okay.
No.
That's what I do with Cindy. I make her watch everything I've ever done. She's so sick of it.
No, I don't. You know, it's kind of funny. I don't know how to explain the kind of life we had together. I mean, if we would see it, like I remember he was on location and he did a film called Simon King of the Witches, and so I think I finally put it in the VHS or whatever it was, and he called me up. And I said, you were really good in Simon King of the Witches. And he beat. And he said, are you high? I said, no. And he goes, it was awful. I said, no, it was not. I said, yeah, the special effects had a red dot, going around. But Andrew, when you look on people's reviews, someone said, he's better than Jim Morrison. He looks sexy. He does this. Almost like a Shakespearean thing where he's calling to the gods. And Andrew was such a fine actor, like anyone else who's playing a warlock would act like, like a magician. They would act like they know what they're doing. But he didn't. He acted like it was a recipe, like maybe a little more salt. No, sugar. And that didn't work. We're going to have to think of something else. And he played it totally straight. Yeah. Somebody else would have been very corny. But he was very grounded in everything he did, including like the cult films that he did later on.
So the movie stunk, but he was good.
The movie actually is good.
Oh, okay.
It's
What's
good.
it called?
It's called Simon King of the Witches.
Simon King of the Witches.
It was so cool because Quentin Tarantino was a big fan of Andrew's.
Okay. And
before we left Los Angeles, he has this theater on Beverly Boulevard. It was Halloween. It was raining. He said, I'm not going to go. I mean, it's a two feature. It was Simon King of the Witches and Grizzly.
Okay.
And it was fan-based. So the fans voted on what they wanted to see, and those were the two movies. So again, raining, nobody's going to come. We walk in, and even in a Cineplex, it's hard to get anybody there. It was packed. And I looked at him, I said, I thought nobody was coming. And he goes, I don't know. I don't know who these people are, right? And so they had him up on stage, and the lights were in his eyes, and didn't know he was going to do a Q&A. And he said, well, I'll answer this person's question, and then the lady behind you. And this big burly man gets up and goes, I'm no lady, Mr. Prine, but I'll ask my question. After that, it was a Rocky Horror Show. I mean, people were laughing, having a ball. These films were made, maybe not intentionally, but definitely humorous. And it's something almost that you can't even capture today because I don't know whether it was an era or what, but Chris George, he's at this lodge and they're chasing a bear in the film Grizzly. And Chris George seriously says, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And this dumb girl goes, you're not finding the bear. You're not catching the bear. And it's like, you wouldn't do that today, right? And then they have...
So it's unintentionally funny.
Yes. Yeah. And they have this Miss Penthouse who is one of the rangers. And they're going out to look for the grizzly bear that's killing everybody, wiping them out and leaving a carcass.
Right.
And she decides, they come upon a waterfall, and she's going, I think I'll maybe take a shower. And she takes off her ranger clothes, and there she is luxuriating. And then you see this big old paw coming and swiping, I mean, it's just completely stupid, right?
Yeah.
Completely stupid.
But today, if you were to do that, it would seem like you're trying to be that.
Yes, and so when he would encounter a lot of young filmmakers, there were all kinds of films that maybe weren't his favorite. And they would say, I want to do that. And he's looking at them going, okay, all right.
Right.
But again, it was him in these films.
Yeah.
And he, as someone said on the internet, he never played the same role twice. Now, it could be a gangster, a killer, whoever, but he never played it exactly the same.
Sure.
There's some actors that you can't say that about.
No. They almost become caricatures of themselves. Like,
correct.
I'm thinking of one who's in a lot of mafia movies, but all of a sudden, like every movie he's in, it's like he's a mafia. It's in a mafia movie, but it's not a mafia movie. But he acts like a mobster because that's kind of been his thing. Yeah.
And Andrew wasn't that kind of guy. I mean, he did all kinds of plays. He worked with Charlton Heston and Deborah Carr in Long Day's Journey into Night.
Okay.
He was directed by Henry Fonda.
Wow.
And, he had this huge career in theater that he kept, and I think that's what kept him grounded and interesting in films,
So now you're an actress too.
I've been an actress, yeah.
You've been an actress.
Yes.
And you were at the time you met him?
Yes, I was actually. Oh.
So you're kind of both in the same business. So it's not like you're a normie and, he kind of plucked you from obscurity. Like you had your career going and you were doing these things. So you knew what the business was like and you knew what to expect and everything like that.
Right.
But he, being that he was much older, had a long career behind him. But does that, I get the feeling it doesn't, but does that kind of in some ways take over your relationship with him, or did you have a pretty seemingly normal life, like not really a Hollywood life when you were at home?
God, I don't know.
That's a good answer.
I don't know. I mean, we had a Hollywood life at home, but
But I guess what I'm saying, and again, I don't know because I'm not in Hollywood, but like I imagine when I say a Hollywood life at home, like it's two people with tremendous egos walking around talking over and around each other about themselves, but nobody's actually listening to the other. It's all about my career and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, no. I mean, we were friends.
Okay.
We were friends.
So you had I'm not asking if you really had a phony relationship. I'm not saying that.
No. I mean, we were grounded.
Yeah,
I mean, the one thing I find interesting that, how you forget what you're like.
Yes.
And so this friend of ours said, I remember you being around the swimming pool and being in a bikini and high heels. And I'm like,
somebody said that to me once.
Yeah, you look better though than I did.
I don't think so.
But I was like, I did, but I also modeled.
Okay.
So we, it was Kathy Ireland and we would model bathing suits. So of course, I guess I did wear high heels.
Sure.
And it makes your legs look better. And but that's just not something you thought about much. And then when she told me, I said, I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
What did you like to do together? You're going to go spend a Sunday afternoon doing something.
Oh.
What did you like to do?
He loved to drive. He did have a Porsche.
Okay.
And
so you found out later that he actually had one.
I kind of knew that he had a Porsche. I was putting him on pretty bad,
right.
making him work hard.
Yeah.
But he loved to drive. He loved to go to the beach. He did ask me, he said, I want you to do, two things. I want you to learn to ski. So he put me together with a guy named Phil Gerard who taught Susie Jaffe how to ski.
Okay.
And how you did that was I was on Ventura Boulevard and you had a belt and then you had a bar. And so a carpet rolled up towards you to create gravity and you would go side to side. And that's how I learned to ski. And the other thing he wanted me to learn was tennis. Well, it went from that to trap and skeet shooting. Then he wanted me to learn scuba diving. I mean, it kind of went on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he had these interests in these things, and instead of saying, I'm going to go trap and skeet shooting or scuba diving or whatever, he's like, come along with me and let's do this together.
Totally. We were doing this film festival in Northern California. And there was Robert Mitchum's brother, John Mitchum, and there was this single action shot. It was a competition. It was a balloon and timing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm passing by, and there was a crowd, and so he said, Heather, get in here. I said, no, I'm going to go to this yard sale down the street. He goes, get in here. Well, he beats everybody, and suddenly it's him and myself on this line, and I beat him 2 out of 3. And anybody else, maybe would take issue. Nobody was prouder. Nobody was happier.
Yeah.
I was always showing off for this guy.
Nice.
We did another thing in Arizona, and it was a stuntman, Diamond Farnsworth, father's Richard Farnsworth, all these guys. Andrew's going, get in here. I said, it was like a rodeo, situation. And it was balloons, timing, and a horse. So I had hired a guy named Phil Spangenberger for a movie that I produced called Avenging Angel. And we had Tom Berenger in it. And we said, we need you to show Tom how to be a fast draw. So Phil was there. And I said, Phil, I'm on a horse. I know how to ride a horse. I mean, how do I shoot? So we went through the paces, and he said, look, he goes, this is good because you're not shooting over the horse's neck. But if you ever did, you have to raise the gun because the horse might buck and put his ears back. I said, okay. We went through the motions. We come back. They had changed everything so that now you had to shoot over the horse's neck. And there were all of these guys, stunt people, Andrew, actors, and I'm sitting there. I'm the only woman doing this. And of course, I went, giddy up, giddy up. And again, showing off for him, I got everyone except one. My gun jammed. And I said to Phil, what do you do like with the last gun? And he said, hold it over your head like Roy Rogers and just go like hell, And big smile on his face.
Just he's proud of you.
Totally. I mean, Diamond Farnsworth said, Prine, your wife's making us look bad. And he goes, I know. He didn't care.
That was him. You were his pride and joy.
Well, and he was mine. So there was, I mean, if there was an ego, we had common ground, We met somewhere. And I think the key to it is we always wanted the best for each other.
That's nice.
We truly did.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say honestly that was the case.
And that's the way it should be. No matter what your careers are, like a relationship, a husband and wife especially, like that's the way it should be. It's like you support each other in that way, and you cheer for each other when they do good and all that.
Yeah.
All right, so now you bring up Tom Berenger, so this is a nice segue into Gettysburg.
Sure.
I guess we should bring Bo in here.
Okay.
Because then Bo can talk about Gettysburg too. He was in that movie. Bo, come on in. We've kept him in the closet for far too long.
Well, it's time he gets out of the closet.
I know. I see him pacing back there, and time he gets out of the closet. Yeah, it is. He's 66. It's about time. All right, Bo, have a seat. Put these on there. And there's Bo sitting down there, ladies and gentlemen. Very exciting. Very exciting. There. Now you got to pull the mic down to your mouth, Bo. There's a mic on the side of the headphones.
Oh, the headphones.
Pull it. There you go.
Hi. Should I just talk into this?
That's all you do.
Just the tip?
So we're talking about Gettysburg, the movie Gettysburg. Now, how does Andrew get this role? Now, wait, before that, though, he got the... How does this work? You were saying this before in the hotel.
Yeah.
He got the role before he met you? Or
no.
What?
I met Ron Maxwell.
That's right.
In the 80s, before I knew Andrew.
Okay.
And before Bo and I met. And I have a postcard that Ron sent me from the Cannes Film Festival saying, these people are tired of me bringing this project under my shoulder, and said, oh, not that again, please. And anyway, it's very, very sweet. I can't tell you how I met Ron. I don't know, but we were very close friends. And then he finally gets, the backing from Ted Turner. And so that's when Bo comes into this picture.
Yeah, I met Ron in I think it was 89. It was at 89 at the Cannes Film Festival. We were at the Carlton.
Oh, the Carlton. Yeah, of course.
Is this when you got in the fight over the salad?
Yeah. Yeah, he was sitting with another director 2 tables over, and this drunk Brit was sitting on my rented Porsche. Oh. And I was, there's the fence that goes around the outdoor cafe, a wrought iron fence. And I was with about 5 other people. And I said, oh, excuse me, could you not sit on my car? It's rented. And, you're sitting on the hood. And he jumps up and he goes, oh, look at you bloody American. You don't even know how to eat a salad. He's just using his fork. And I'd had a few drinks, so I immediately grabbed him by the shirt, and I pulled him, because it's a waist-high fence, I pulled him over the fence onto the table.
Yeah.
And kind of cleared the table a little bit. And I grabbed him by the throat, and I said a few things to him, and I shoved him back over.
Wow.
And so I look over, and there's these 2 men, two tables down, and they're laughing their ass off. And Ron Maxwell said, hey, you remind me of Dennis Quaid. I directed him in a film. And I'm like, oh, which one? And he said, the Georgia film. I forget what it's called now. And I said, oh, yeah, he's my cousin. And I remember when he did the film, And so he said, well, hey, join us. So I joined them for a drink, and then the other guy left, and we ended up walking around town all night long just talking. We both lived not far away from each other in New York City, and he pitched me the script and said, there's a part in here for you. And then we ended up spending the rest of like the week at Cannes together. I mean, we'd meet for drinks and go to dinner and stuff like that. We just really hit it off. And we went back to New York, and we started going to baseball games together because we both loved baseball. And then I moved out to L.A., back to L.A., and about a month later he did, and he started coming to Hidden Hills, where we had a house in Hidden Hills. It was a horse community thing out on 101, and he loved it so much he got a house right down from us. So, we were really tight. I remember when actually it was Ken Burns who introduced Ron to Ted Turner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he went to a round table up here, and he told me, he said, these people in Gettysburg, I'm almost ashamed to come to Gettysburg because I've been coming here for 10 years promising this movie, and people don't even believe me anymore.
Right.
But he went to this round table, and Ted Turner was there, and Ken Burns was aware of Ron's script, and he'd known Ken. So Ken said, hey, I want to introduce you to Ted Turner. He's the perfect candidate for this. He loves the Civil War.
Interesting.
And so they started talking. And, one thing about Ron, he's an amazing salesman. Mm-hmm. This guy, he truly, he's a very good salesman. I learned my pitch from him.
Okay.
He is like, years ago, he was the master of the pitch. He had it down. And I learned everything from him from being in pitch meetings with him, But I met Andy. I'm pretty sure it was in 1990 because that's when we started living in L.A. And I met him. He's one of the first people I met when I came back to L.A. And so we saw each other a lot. And I'm the one that brought it up that, hey, we're the Gettysburg movie and stuff. And so. And then I think you were instrumental in it too. But, I suggested early on that Andy does a role in it.
Yeah.
And then Heather, come to find out, had known Ron longer than any of us. And so, she was in contact with Ron as well. So
how did you talk to Ron about getting Andy involved, or
Andrew, I think it was already in motion. It was
already in motion.
Okay.
I think that I think that Bo and I had talked, and he was like our point person because he was involved with the film, and Ron, knew me,
Yeah.
knew Andrew. So it's not like a hard pitch. It was like,
oh yeah, no,
what, where and what. And if I'm recalling correctly, Andrew was offered the role of a Northerner. And he said to Ron, I said, I can't do that. He goes, I would not be able to go home. And they said, well, there's only some smaller roles. And he goes, I want Garnett. He goes, I understand this guy. He doesn't get off the horse.
Right.
He understands it. It's that scene with him and Richard is so poignant, and Andrew nailed it. And it was almost Shakespearean.
We were talking about this before at the hotel with the explosion going off behind them when he's on the horse, and Armistead is begging him to walk and not take the horse.
Right.
And the explosion goes. And I've always loved this shot because it's just such a calm coolness. The horse kind of jumps and steps aside, I think, if I'm picturing it correctly, and he doesn't move.
Right.
Andrew. And he just stays up there, and he's still looking down at
he steadies
Richard
his horse.
And
all he does, he's in the middle of conversation, he steadies his horse, but doesn't lose his focus on. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, no,
that is so cool.
Was really cool.
That's also a good horseman.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because anybody else would be like,
maybe from doing westerns or something.
Sure.
I can tell you a story that someone told me about when they were losing the light, and it was a Western, and they had taken the horses away, and they said, we have one more shot. We don't know what to do. Andrew said, give me a ladder. And they said, what? And he got up on the ladder, and he actually, it was a tight shot on him, and he walked the ladder and was doing this back and forth. And they were just like, "Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Are you kidding me?" And he was going, "Whoa!" But if you look
That's
at
clever.
really like wonderful actors from the 40s or 30s, they did that. Like Andy Devine
with John Wayne. Yes, I was just going to say that.
And he does that whole dialogue of, my wife, Chiquita, she's telling me and her family, whoa there.
Yeah.
And then I said, no, Chiquita, and whoa. And you watch these guys and they make something out of it.
It's acting.
And that's Andrew. I mean, he would walk a ladder and you wouldn't know that it's a ladder.
That's so cool.
Something really funny that I don't want to forget what he told me about John Wayne, because he worked with John Wayne. And I'm like, wow, I grew up, always idolized John Wayne. What was he like? He says, well, you could never joke about his feet or his hands. And I said, really? Why is that? And he said, Bo, his feet were so small.
I don't believe this story.
No, it's true.
I mean, I believe he said it, but I don't believe that his feet were small.
Okay, I'll address that as well. And he said his hands were so small that that his guns, and you probably heard Andy tell you
I've
this.
never heard the story.
Oh, okay. So his guns were made smaller to make his hands look larger. Okay. So I never forgot what Andy told me, because I was like, you mean that big old man had these little bitty feet and little bitty hands? He goes, Bo, I can't tell you, they're abnormally small.
I don't buy it.
Okay, hold on.
Do you buy this?
I've never heard this story.
I think this is an older actor.
Okay, so
just telling a story to a younger actor.
I have two follow-ups with that.
Right.
Okay, three actually. Okay, so never forgetting what Andy told me. I was down in Hollywood one day on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in front of the theater.
No.
And I found his hand and feet print.
Right.
And I will tell you this. His hands, he was so freaked out about putting his hand like this in the mud, he put his fist so he wouldn't have to show his hands. Guess how they measured in my fist? From here to there.
Oh, come on.
John Wayne's fist looked like a monkey's fist. And let me tell you something else. His feet are probably a woman's 6. All right, now, hold on. Let me tell you where he got his Hollywood swagger.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
He had the best Hollywood walk
ever
in Hollywood history.
Absolutely.
Do you know why?
Because he had small feet?
He would roll off the balls of his feet early. His body would have to compensate, thus swinging his shoulders like this to stay in balance. He had a great walk, but he fell off he would fall off the balls of his feet. He had this amazing walk. And then I saw an interview with Lauren Bacall, and they were asking her. They just say like so and so, and he go so and so. And so the guy, the commentator is like, John Wayne, and she said, yes, the big man with little feet.
No. Are you
I'm quoting
serious?
her. Yeah.
I'm going to look this up.
The big man with little feet. This guy had the smallest feet I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
On a man. And especially a 6'4" man.
Now, I remember you've told me this story many times before, and I doubt it to this day. Every time you tell me, I go, I don't buy this.
Andrew Prine worked with him and told me this story.
I think
which started my quest to find out if John Wayne had little feet.
I think.
But can I interject?
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is what's amazing. I've never heard this before.
Right.
And so this is why I say to people, Andrew and I had more conversation left. After he died, because I never heard this story. It's, it wasn't like we blabbed everything to each other all the time. This is amazing. I've never heard this. This is hysterical.
But here's the thing. Did he like to do stuff like this? Because this is what I'm thinking. How old would you say Andrew was at the time you guys were doing Gettysburg?
54, right?
54? He was in his 50s?
He was born in 36 or 37?
Yeah, he was in his 50s.
And you were in your 30s?
35.
35.
Yeah.
So, okay, my theory is that he sees this young, impressionable actor, and he's going to tell him, he hears, oh, I've always idolized John Wayne. He goes, well, let me tell you about John Wayne. And then he makes this story up just to mess with you.
I will tell you
wouldn't do that.
I'll tell you what he did do.
Okay.
So we would be at a Western Film Festival, and people would say, Mr. Prine, could you tell us something about John Wayne that we did not know? And he would say, well, he said, we'd have a long week shooting, and we'd be out there, and there was just not much going on. He said, and so the Duke liked his weekends.
Yeah.
And so, unbeknownst to people, he just, we'd go back to the hotel and decide to all meet up. And John had this little pink chiffon dress he liked to get into with these little heels. And he would walk in and he looked stunning. And the audience went, and then they got the joke, right?
Yes.
They got it. They got the joke.
This is my theory. I think... And the thing with the
Go to
cement, I'll never.
Check
but the thing with the fist of the cement, he could have.
I have big hands.
You have
of
big
course.
ham hands.
But his, to the middle of my knuckle right here. That's it, right there. That monkey.
But I have seen. Okay, so Dean Martin apparently had big hands, and he had a lot of his knuckles were all weird because from
was
boxing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've seen the Dean Martin show with John Wayne, and they shake hands, and Duke's hand envelops.
Like that.
No, it's this big ham hand.
Oh, that was his prosthetic hand that he'd pull out of his sleeve.
Stop, you're terrible.
He had a fake hand.
He had a fake shake.
Just to make it look big.
Fake shake.
But then I saw an interview with Glenn Campbell, and he said the first time I shook his hand, there's this big, huge hand just wrapped around mine. So did Duke say, lie on my behalf to all these people if anybody ever asks you?
I'm friends with Kim Darby. Who did
Okay, yeah.
great. I will ask her.
Ask her, please.
I will ask her.
Especially about the feet.
You guys are nuts. You guys,
Please.
well, Andrew also
And you know
worked
what?
with Dean Martin, too.
Could you get me an interview with Kim Darby? Would she do that?
How much is it worth to you?
My admiration.
Oh, that. Andrew worked with Dean Martin, too.
I did not. No, and he's my other favorite. On what?
Texas Across the River.
Okay.
And then Bandolero.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
With Jimmy Stewart, Dean Martin, Raquel Welch.
Yeah.
Andrew used to hang out with Raquel all the time.
Really?
And and Andrew worked with Jimmy Stewart a number of times.
Oh, he's a classic, Jimmy Stewart.
He was a classic.
He's an American treasure.
Yeah,
he tells an interesting story that Jimmy Stewart, they were doing let's say a 2-shot or something, a long shot, and it had to be a long shot because he wrote into it.
Yeah.
And he gets off he was the hanging man, and he gets off and he comes up into the view and he blows his line. And Andrew said he kept blowing the line. And everybody was going, oh my gosh, it's Jimmy Stewart and he's older and this is terrible.
Right.
Well, they said, you know what, Jimmy, let's just pick it up and do a close up, in about 15 minutes. Comes back. He does his close-up, says every word perfectly. Andrew said, I know what he was doing. He was waiting because he didn't want that shot. He wanted his close-up.
Oh.
And he said, so everybody thought Jimmy's had it, and he was smarter than
That's
Fox.
smart. Yeah.
Those old actors, man, they
knew the tricks.
They knew it. They
Yeah.
knew what to do. They knew the tricks.
Who was his favorite guy to work with from those legendary people?
Well, he said the only person that he was really impressed with, because he always felt that he was as good as anybody, but the legend was John Wayne.
Yeah.
He just said when he was working with Wayne, he knew that he had really gotten to the top because it's John Wayne.
Yeah.
And, John Wayne ran the production.
Right.
So John Wayne knew.
There was Bat Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knew who Andrew was. If he did not want him on that set, or thought that Andrew was not up to the task, he would not have been there.
Right. From what I understand from interviews I've seen is that he was a real professional. You know your lines.
Yeah.
You deliver your lines. And I was watching an interview with Peter Bogdanovich interviewing John Wayne. Have you ever seen those interviews?
No.
Oh, there's some great interviews from the late 60s when Peter Bogdanovich was up and coming, and he interviewed Orson Welles,
he was a film
and
critic,
Hitchcock.
or-
Yeah. But he's like a student of film history and the technique and everything.
Yeah.
And the art of it. And so he's interviewing John Wayne. And I think he was telling a story. I think it was John Ford who gave him this advice early in his career. And he said, listen, you're going to get a line and it's going to feel corny. and don't argue about it. Just deliver it the best you can as if it wasn't corny. Essentially, that's not exactly how it would have said.
Right.
But like, and so, because there are some lines that John Wayne was given that are kind of corny, you know, but but it's the way he says it. It's the
Hey, Mister.
Hey, Mister Pilgrim, or
Pilgrim.
But like, they're not corny when he does it, and
They're
so
iconic. They become iconic.
right. So okay, so that was his favorite to work with. Did he? I mean, you probably don't want to say this, but was there? Just say yes or no. Was there anybody he didn't like besides Bo Brinkman?
I think Bo was probably the worst. You know,
I believe that.
I think he had to go into therapy. Yeah. And I don't know.
And he
that
didn't really have any scenes with him.
I know. It was like really, but see, we did a play together too.
You and Bo?
Well, yeah, we did a play with Sarah Gilbert, right before Gettysburg.
Gettysburg, yeah.
Oh, no, Sarah Gilbert.
Sarah
What
Gilbert.
did I say?
The girl from Roseanne.
Yeah.
Yeah, did I say Miss?
It was supposed to be-
you said Sarah. I
It was
just
supposed
making
to be
sure.
Ricky Lake, and actually in L.A., me, Andy, and Ricky Lake were rehearsing, and you were with us. And I mean, we rehearsed for about a week or so.
Yeah.
And Ricky loved the play and wanted to do it so badly, but then she got an offer she couldn't refuse and had to leave.
Is that Hairspray?
No, it was. I think it. I thought it was
Movie
the
of the
Ricky
week.
Lake show.
Oh, the Ricky Lake.
No, it was a movie of the week.
Oh,
because
okay.
She ended up not doing it.
Oh, okay. Well, too bad for her because we had such a good time.
Right.
What was the play?
It was called the Downwinder Dance.
Okay.
We did it at the Cincinnati Rep. Yeah, we were very disappointed. It was a big blow to us because we were coming there with cast, basically.
Yeah.
And then I thought of Sarah, and my wife at the time was working on something, and she couldn't do it.
That's Melissa.
Yeah, and you know, really,
Sarah's
Melissa,
sister.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Melissa really wasn't right for it.
No, she would have been wrong.
It would have been all wrong anyway. But I thought Sarah, and I called her, and she just wrapped on the Roseanne Barr show, and I'm like, "You want to do a play this summer?" And she's like, "Yeah." And oh my God, we had a blast. It was the best choice. We had such
Oh
a
my
good
God.
time.
This is post Gettysburg.
Yeah,
It was right before Gettysburg.
Right before Gettysburg.
Yeah.
right before Gettysburg. So, I mean, I kind of taught her to be a kid again because you know we had so much fun. I was just telling you yesterday. One night we went out.
Oh God.
And we bought like 100 pounds of dishwashing liquid and soap and you know all kinds of soaps, and we put it in the fountain of the hotel, not knowing, right? And we ran up to our room. It's 2:00 in the morning, and we're waiting and she's like, "Nothing's happening." I'm like, "I know. I just see barely some." So we were on the 4th floor, and like, "There's a few suds down there." Oh, it's a bust. Oh well. Good night, Sarah. So she goes to bed. About 6:00 in the morning, I get this pounding on my door. I'm like, "Oh shit!" I wake up. She goes, "Look out the window!" I opened the shades, and it was suds all the way
Everywhere.
up to the 4th floor.
What?
Yes,
Seriously.
No, wait, is this an indoor fountain or like
outdoor
It's an
fountain.
outdoor fountain. How much did you put in there?
About
A
100
lot.
pounds.
A lot.
Oh my God.
They were so freaked out at the hotel. Every time the double doors would open automatically, balls of suds would roll into the lobby, and people couldn't get out of the parking lot because there were 4 stories high of suds. They didn't know what to do. It was not a
so
windy
funny.
day. And it was people could not find their cars. They couldn't even go outside. So there's 100 people in the lobby not happy, and they're like, and then so what happened was they we had known all the people that worked at the hotel because we'd been living there for 6 weeks, and they're like, we're going to find out who did this. We think we know who it is.
Right.
Like really, who? You know, no cameras at the time.
Right.
Thank God. And they're like Metallica. They did it.
Metallica.
Metallica
They
was
were-
up on the top floor. Right. So we were.
It's a bunch of theater geeks
We
who
went-
did it, but Metallica got
No,
the
but it
blame.
was Metallica for sure. You know, they're like,
Oh, that's so
that's
funny.
who they are.
So I said, yeah, probably was.
They was Metallica. Yeah.
They had to scrub all their pumps, and it was a real big deal. I didn't realize it was such a big deal.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
we-
That's
it was a real
mess.
this
big deal.
particular play was really poignant because it was written by a Mormon, and it was about the effects of the downwind from the atomic bomb testing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was just watching Morning Joe, like, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and they said, nobody's ever addressed this. Well, we did. I mean, we addressed it like 20 years ago. And this was the effects that it had on the people downwind of animals coming out bloated, with 2 feet, 1 feet, 1 foot, and the effect of, the people who got cancer. And so Sarah played a girl whose leg was like a bum leg because of a birth defect. And your part was, you had this great part. You were kind of like, attached to her, like romancing her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So you were in love with the girl with the bum leg?
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice.
And weren't you the son of John Wayne?
I forget now.
I can't remember.
Yeah, the illegitimate child.
The illegitimate child. He was like a slick guy, but Andrew played 3 parts, including an angel.
Angel, yeah.
Really?
I've got a great picture of him as the angel and me we're standing together,
Right?
Yeah, and he's like in his Andy fashion.
It's funny you mentioned that about the fallout from that, because I don't know what I was watching, but recently I watched something. On Netflix there was a docuseries about the Cold War, and they talked about Oppenheimer and that whole era, and it was just an aside in that episode where they talk about how miles away, downwind of the test sites, these kids were out playing. This one story, it was a bunch of girls from a school or something. They were out playing in a creek or something like that, and then all of a sudden it started snowing, and they would catch the snowflakes on their tongues.
Oh, God.
And they all died of cancer before they really reached maturity. Like, it's just horrible. And they couldn't, that was the other thing. It's like, as they're catching the snowflakes, they're like, this snow is hot.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Getting back to John Wayne, interestingly enough, he did this movie called The Conqueror?
Yeah.
They blew up the dust in Utah with big fans.
Yeah.
And a huge number, like
all of them,
like almost all of the cast members.
The cast and crew died of cancer.
And so when John Wayne was asked, they said, don't you think you should stop smoking? He said, they don't think that it was from cigarettes.
Really?
Yeah. Susan
Marino
Hayward.
Tara died of cancer.
I mean, everybody just died of cancer. It was like really crazy.
Yeah. I heard that when they had to do shots that they would shoot in the studio, like on a sound stage, that they actually brought the sand from Utah into the. Is that true?
I don't know.
No.
I mean, that would be pretty horrible.
Yeah.
I doubt it. No,
probably wouldn't need to do that.
No, because you don't use that kind of sand to do
indoors. Right.
Well, you don't use that kind of sand. There's a special sand that you use for sandstorms in controlled environments. It would not be from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But one of the lines from the play was, do you think it was worth it? It was an insurance guy who was trying to settle these claims with families, and he said, "Do you think it was worth it?" And the person said, "Worth what?" And he said, getting cancer from the worst film ever made.
So true.
Right, because he's Genghis Khan.
Yeah, he plays a Chinaman.
Yeah.
Terrible film, and then they all die. I mean, of this awful thing. It's like
I know. He was Mongolian. He wasn't Chinese.
Oh yeah, okay.
Wasn't he?
I think
It was something. He wasn't
she was
Chinese.
what? I don't know, some kind of slave girl or
Maureen
something.
O'Hara?
No, it was Susan Hayward.
Susan Hayward.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No, anyway, but that was what the play was about, and anyway, it was a fascinating thing written, and then we segue, over to something later with Tom Berenger.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Now back to Tom. So now Gettysburg.
Yes.
Okay. So now you do the play, and now you guys worked together before Gettysburg.
Correct.
Yes.
No, that's interesting. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
So now you get into Gettysburg. He says he wants to do Garnett. Do you know who the Union character was that he was supposed to do?
I don't. I wasn't
do you
privy
know?
to that. I don't know who it was.
I don't remember.
Maybe Hancock.
Have no idea.
my
I don't
guess.
even know that the name was ever brought up because
They just wanted him.
Well, they wanted him. That was mentioned, and he just went, no, I got to be a Confederate.
Right.
Well, interesting enough, none of the Southern boys actors would play Northern roles. They were all, that's what Ron said. They all pretty much turned them down and asked for a Southern role.
But now Martin
All the
Sheen
Southern
and Tom
boys.
Berenger, they're not Southerners.
No, I don't think it mattered on the other side that much, as much as it did to us.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and probably like Andrew said, I'd never be able to go home if I played a Yankee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His grandmother still had Confederate money.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. She
Really?
said, I remember counting it as a child.
I remember listening to stories of the Civil War from my great grandparents on the front porch. of
What?
our house.
Yeah. What happened to the money? Did he keep it throughout his life, or did he
No.
like lose it as a kid?
No, it was, once he went to New York, he left everything behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gettysburg begins. The filming begins.
Mm-hmm.
You come out here with him.
No. So he and Bo, the play was done, and so they immediately came over and started filming.
Yeah, we flew together.
Yeah, flew over.
Oh,
here.
really?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
from Cincinnati to to Baltimore.
That's so interesting because one of my other favorite movies from, I believe, that same year was Tombstone.
Oh, lovely.
And, Sam Elliott's in that. Buck Taylor's in it.
Buck, yeah, I know.
And
a lot of people.
And even Dirty Billy, the hat guy here in town, made the hats for Gettysburg and Tombstone. And if I recall from the way he tells it, is Sam Elliott's the guy who got him the job on Tombstone.
Wow.
And so it is, I don't say this in a bad way, but it's kind of an incestuous business, right?
Oh,
or I
sure.
guess not. No, it's like any other business. It's networking.
It's
Right?
I guess so.
I know somebody, and they know you, and
Yeah.
we want to. It's like let's put on a play.
And you like working together.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing as like me as a director. I like to work with the same people over and over again
Right.
for my crew.
Right.
I've been working with some of my crew for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And the same thing goes with actors. If there's actors that are awesome, that are team players and not a pain in the ass, I'll have them back again.
And that's why you don't put me in a movie, is because I'm a pain in the ass. I'm a
we
diva.
can't afford you. That's the
Well,
problem.
and that I come at too high a price.
That's
Yes.
true.
Yeah, and I want points.
Emotionally too.
Oh God.
That's
the biggest part of the price is the emotional toll it takes to work with me.
Can't get over it.
something Andy did, and I took this as kind of his farewell to me. It was 2018 or 2019, and it was even before, I think, because I was still living in LA in 2018. He called me. I talked to you for a brief moment. I don't know if you remember it, but I talked to him for about 20 minutes, and he told me how much he loved me.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and just that, he had good memories from me, and he just talked for a few minutes about our friendship, and he said he loved me and he had great memories, and thank you. And I took that as kind of a farewell to him, from him, because by this time he was sounding it, but he didn't die until 3 or 4 years later, right?
4 years later.
22.
22.
Yeah.
22.
But anyway, I just thought, out of the blue like that was such a gift. It was so sweet for him to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking he probably did that with a lot of his friends.
Sure.
To tell people.
Did you know he was doing that?
No. That's the kind of thing. I like,
yeah.
as I said, I mean, we were close as I think two people could probably be.
Yeah.
But even being close, he was private.
Sure.
And he wasn't the kind of guy who would say to you, "Oh, I called so-and-so and I told him." He wasn't that kind of man. He, he was, like I said, he was very wise. I have to tell this story, changing the tone a little bit about Gettysburg. So Tom Berenger told me this story. As you recall, you guys were originally put out on the highway. They were housed out on the highway. And Andrew said, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "We have to cross the highway to even get a meal. This isn't even union rules." I mean, and so Andrew's like,
such a good story.
Andrew's like, no, if nobody's going to say anything, I'm telling, Esparza Cats, like, we have to move where so Tom Berenger is in the lobby with Andrew, and Andrew's in front of a vending machine, and he's putting the coins in, and Tom says, "Andrew, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm getting a hot meal."
So it's really funny. We all got there, and we have our suitcases and stuff with us, and Ron Maxwell's son Jonathan walks up to me and goes, because they had a van ready for us, to like a bus, like a 30 person
Yeah.
carrier. And Jonathan comes up to me and says, whatever you do, don't get on that bus. And I'm like, why? What's going on? So it's like 15 miles out of town, this freaking motel they have everybody in. Don't do it. And I'm like, oh, thanks for telling me. And about the same time, Andy's already on the bus and he's like, come on, Bo. And I'm like, I'll catch up with you. So I went straight into the locations office and I just said, all right, here's the deal. I'm not going to stay in a motel. Either get me a place to live or I'm just going to go back to the airport.
What? Really?
Yeah. And
what a prick.
And so, yeah, I know, right? And I said, and she said, oh no, don't do that. And I said, well, I mean, you know, I can talk to Ron Maxwell about that. Oh, don't bother him. I said, okay, then I need a place to stay. I'm not going to stay in a motel 15 miles out of town.
Right.
And so they gave me a house in Heritage Village, and so I had a house, and she was like, just don't tell anybody. I said, no, I'm going to tell everyone. Okay? Now, take me out there. I want to see the place. And so I stayed there until they couldn't find a place for
Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels. And so I gave him my place because he had
his family with him. Yeah.
And so they put me at the Gettysburg Hotel.
Nice.
But so Andy, I saw him in town that night, and I said, so Andy, how was it? He goes, Bo. And pretty much what you said. He goes, it's so boring out there that if you pick a candy bar from the candy machine, you pick the one at the top, so it'll take longer. It'll take longer for the candy to fall down. And so he actually spent one night there and did pretty much the same thing I did. It's like, I need a place to stay.
Really?
We're not doing this.
Yeah.
Wow. Where did they have you?
Emmitsburg.
Oh my God.
Like this. I never saw the place, but I heard it was just a motel with no dining area. Nothing. Nowhere to. Nobody had a car, so everybody was stranded.
You're stuck there.
Stuck there until the band came back.
What the hell were they thinking?
They weren't
cheap.
Yeah.
But Andrew just said, this is against SAG rules. I mean,
you're not doing this. Yeah,
we're not doing this. Not doing it.
So then you all get put up in the hotel. But that's what you wanted to be anyway, because you could walk to the bars, right?
Sure.
Yeah. You wanted to hit the bars.
Exactly.
And the Farnsworth House, remember that?
Yeah.
You guys had blockaded that so that no Northerner could get in.
We commandeered.
Yes.
Yeah, commandeered. No.
Now, while they're doing that, are you hanging out with them, or is this like a no wives allowed thing?
No,
I've got that picture of me that I gave you. I'm on the set.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was there all the time.
Well, but I'm talking about the parties, the Farnsworth House.
Oh, are you kidding? I was right there.
Yeah. Okay.
She was part of the club.
I was part of the club. Yeah.
So you get to, so you're here on the set the whole time, or did you have to go and do other things, or were you here the whole time?
Back and forth, because we had our house in L.A. But I mean,
how long was he out here?
Weeks. I don't even know.
Months.
Yeah.
We were here until September 19th or something, weren't we?
A long time.
And we got here. I got here
August.
before the play to do some rehearsal.
Yeah, you and he flew over.
Yeah, to do some rehearsal.
Yeah.
And that was in May. And then we finished the play up, and man, we were shooting the day we got here.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in the first shot of the movie.
When the theater was dark, they would be flying back and forth. Because it would be dark from like Monday to Wednesday. So they were over here.
So, give me some memories. What when you think of your experience on the set of Gettysburg, what is the one memory that always pops out in your head?
Two things. I was there the day that Ron used the drones with the cannons.
Yeah.
And that was a tremendous shot. It was so spectacular. And he just captured it. And, I think that films today just wouldn't even possibly capture. There was some kind of an emotion attached to that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then one day I was coming to see Andrew on the set, and the reenactors, it was a mile long. There was like 5,000 reenactors. And I said, could you tell me where General Garnett is? And they went, he's down there, ma'am. And so I walked in front of all of these reenactors, and in unison, they threw their hat up in the air and said, "The eyes of Virginia are upon you, ma'am." And nobody said, "Hey, let's do this." It was just immediate, like, yeehaw.
Right.
They did the rebel yell.
Were you bikini modeling at the time?
with my high heels.
Better heels kept sinking in the mud. It was terrible.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I should have rethought the heels.
But I wore a bonnet. So I was appropriate.
Yeah, okay. So but you like that, though, the reenactor. There was from what I gather from all the interviews I've done about the movie, there was a spirit on this movie that is unlike many, anything else that you guys have done.
Yeah.
I think is why everybody comes back 30 years later and is happy to do it, because it was a great experience for everybody. And this is a pretty special little place. Have you been back here since, well, you were here the 25th?
18th, yes.
Yeah, but before that, between the movie and the 25th anniversary?
No, but the crazy thing in actuality is Andrew and I were visiting family in Ohio. We were coming up for New Year's way before the film, and just, we just couldn't make it all the way to New York. So we stopped in this town called Gettysburg, and the next day took photos of the battlefields. Little did we know, that's when you had those little cameras that you bought. For some oddball reason, it was black and white film. So we have these very haunting pictures of the battlefields.
Oh, yeah.
And this is before we even dreamed that Andrew would be doing Gettysburg.
Right,
so it was
okay.
kind of a precursor to the whole thing.
Oh, that's cool.
I know. So we had been here, but not on purpose.
Right.
Just
And that's prior to the movie, but not since the movie until the 25th anniversary.
Right.
When you guys came back for the 25th, you mentioned before that he had back surgery?
He had broken his back.
He'd broken his back.
In a restaurant where 2 people fell off the step and 2 people fell up. And it took the bone away. They kept saying it was a fracture, but the bone was gone.
Really?
So they took his rib out and rebuilt the spine. So when he came back, it was, we didn't know he was going to walk again, but he came back and he was super. He just didn't complain. I mean, he was that kind of person.
And what was his response to or reaction to coming back here after 25 years?
Loved it.
Did he love it?
Sure. I mean, he got to see Bo and Stephen Lang and all the guys. I mean, there was a real band of brothers there.
Yeah.
They had been through the war because, it was such a huge undertaking that nobody knew. And do you remember this? So Ron was in California. He had a party, and he was showing us some rushes of the movie, and Martin was there. And at first we were looking at these rushes and dailies, and we're going, God, this is terrible. How is he going to put this together? Because it was like a pizza thrown on the floor. I mean, nobody had the continuity of it. He was just showing us what he had filmed.
Like a little vignette.
Not even that.
But it was out of context.
It was out of context. It would be like home movies, like, here we are at the beach. Here, and so we didn't know how he was going to string it together. And it wasn't color corrected. It was nothing.
Yeah.
But he had that vision. He knew exactly what he was doing. But we all just went,
oh boy.
Yeah.
Shit.
This looks awful.
Yeah.
There's a blooper reel that somebody had sent me.
Oh God.
And I put it on my YouTube channel, and it's very interesting to watch the bloopers. There's a part where Tom Berenger rides up to Martin Sheen and announces that, they've taken Gettysburg, they're moving on to Philadelphia, they're moving on to New York, and and you could tell that they had fun, but you could also tell that they took it seriously. Like, when it was time to take it seriously.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of the stories you told me is about a lot of goofing around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Not much about taking anything seriously.
Yeah.
It's mostly.
Well, we were working so hard, and with a very difficult time. I mean, we were wearing wool in, the heat of the summer, and, So we whooped it up after we got done, and we had some pranks on set a little bit too, and it just helps keep the camaraderie and keep the energy going.
Yeah,
when you do that kind of stuff.
Do you remember the tents? The tents they originally had, just the 4 prongs holding, a canopy.
Yeah,
they were black, so it was summer and it was attracting the heat.
Yeah.
And so I mean, they were wearing wool. And in a black tent, and so they were saying, you've got to get a lighter color out here because, we're roasting.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It was horrible.
And people were dropping like flies. A lot of reenactors, they were older. They weren't, young boys. And a lot of people were dropping like flies. That scene with me, Marty, and Tom, the three of us, they're standing there, and there's people standing in the background. I think
at Lee's headquarters, where they're
no, I forget where it is now. But it's right after the flapjack stuff, and then we walk over.
Oh yeah.
And this guy just right behind us just goes boop like that, and Tom goes, he's got a cigar, and he goes this. So anyway, and then he comes back and finishes it. What happens? Marty runs over there. Get this man some ice. And he's holding his head and all this. And still Tom is like standing there. I'm like, okay. Kind of like what happened at Barnesburg.
I was going to say, I believe that because I witnessed it 30 years later.
Oh, my goodness.
The guy, passing out.
Yeah.
Tom, once again.
So anyway, Venice.
Yeah, about Venice.
It's like, wait a minute, is your friend okay?
Oh, he's fine.
He's fine.
I think he'd be all right.
Time.
EMS is here.
I'll tell you something about the reenactors that were amazing.
Just pull that mic a little closer to you so we can hear you better.
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just pull it in towards you.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, you go. Here.
Just the tip.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, come on, Bob.
All right, you freaks. Cut it out. Knock it off. The reenactors are dedicated people, right? And they had the camps so that we would go out and be with them.
Yeah.
But when they would be filming, especially on the battlefield, the actual battlefield, no one turned around after Ron Maxwell said cut. They totally backed up, backward, because in reality in the Civil War, you didn't want to have a bullet in your back.
Right.
And so they were honoring those men who would back off the battlefield as opposed to just turning around, even though it wasn't being filmed. But that was their dedication.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed was at the end of the day, walking off of the battlefield, nobody talked. It wasn't like a regular movie set where people would say, how about that job, blah, 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 blah. All you heard was the clanging of like metal and things like that, but everybody was silent.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful,
Yeah.
Because they knew and they were honoring what had just transpired,
Was it...
That was so moving. Yeah.
It was incredible.
It's great that you pointed that out because I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before about them backing off.
Mm-hmm.
Did you happen to or did Andrew want to do did you do any like history stuff while you were here? Did you have time to, like, on a day off, would you go take a tour of the battlefield or anything like that, or was it mostly just like fun and relaxation when you had off?
He probably did before I came.
Okay.
He took a car and went places.
Was he interested in history?
Oh, he loved history.
He loved history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Loved history.
What was his favorite era of history?
I would say probably the Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems that there's a generation or two where the Civil War is like it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not so much anymore.
Well, now it's
World War
becoming
II now.
World War II now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've even talked to Civil War relic dealers, and they're like, it ain't like what it used to be. People are not so much interested in collecting anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know Tom Berenger had a couple $100,000 worth of relics and maps and things, and he either donated them, either sold or donated them to museums.
Mm-hmm.
He has no more. He's over it, but still loves the history. But a lot of people, they're more focused on World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, Andrew did a lot of World War II films, starting with television. For Quinn Martin, he did 12 O'Clock High.
Okay.
And his brother was Bruce Dern. Mm-hmm. And the guy who's trying to get him off base under the guise that they were going to meet girls, but he was really, the guy was selling like firearms to somebody off the base. It was Burt Reynolds. And
Wow.
it's a fabulous, it's on YouTube. It's 12 O'Clock High. And Andrew plays like the unassuming guy, but also Quinn Martin was so smart. It was geared towards adults. So not only was it like today, I think, some of these TV series are so one-sided that that would be the thing, that you're selling the gun right off the base. But it got even more complicated. Andrew was afraid to fly because of something. So they introduced that element that he thought that he couldn't really do it. And Bruce Dern is going, you can do it. And then there's over here, it's Burt Reynolds trying to get him off the base, with the guise of girls. It's just so many, elements that were so interesting in those early, television shows.
Did he have, I was watching something about Don Rickles and Bob Newhart the other day and their friendship and how these guys were like best friends. They would take their families to Disney and all that stuff. And like they would go on vacations around the world together as families. Right. And the wives were best friends and everything. Did he have a Hollywood best friend like that, or
sure?
Yeah.
He was very close with William Holden.
Oh yeah,
and Dean Martin. He and Dean were very, very close. Also, Glenn Ford.
Okay,
he hung out at Glenn Ford's. I went to Glenn Ford's house before Glenn had passed away, and went to some parties there that he had for his birthday. Debbie Reynolds would come. But Andrew knew Glenn, and Judy Garland would sing to both of them. And, they had all these MGM stars there before me, before I was out in Los Angeles. But William Holden, he became very close with them. But
he was in The Horse Soldiers with John Wayne, William Holden.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's like one of my favorites.
And then what happens is just life kind of takes everybody apart slowly but surely.
That happens to us nobodies too.
It happens to everybody.
You have like an era of
Well, he decided. He couldn't hang around with some of these people. Andrew, when he was living in New York, he was fairly straight. And wasn't doing anything. He was on Broadway, doing this and that. You come out to Los Angeles, and he's kind of saw it with Steve Cochran, who was a bit of a bad boy, in the 50s. But these guys were drinkers.
Oh yeah.
And he was trying to keep up with them, but at a certain point, you can't.
So he never had a problem with the booze or drugs?
No, I think that there was a situation where he had to really watch it, because it seeps up on people, and he had to keep it in check and meet with people to see, about sobriety.
Yeah.
And, I think that was key to him surviving towards the end of his life. Well, when we were married, for long periods, he would not drink. Then towards the end of his life, he might try to have like a vodka and tonic, but then would just drink part of it. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like drinking did not kill him. He avoided that bullet.
Yeah.
And of course,
that's an awful way to go too.
Yeah. And he lived through the 70s, it makes me laugh about people who call themselves influencers, and they're like locked in a room, right? And they're an influencer. They barely go out to Kroger or Ingles or whatever it is, or Walmart. And I was just thinking of Andrew and these guys. They were influencers. Sure. They lived it. Yeah. The way they lived life, the way they dressed, that's what you saw in these fan magazines, and that's what influenced people, whether it was bell bottoms or whatever. Yeah. But wasn't somebody just saying, hey, the in thing is fur vests, Nehru suits.
They actually lived the life.
They lived it. They totally lived it. Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like, there's still an element of that in Hollywood where, there's the life and people live it and stuff, but it doesn't seem as
there's
cool.
Nothing glamorous or cool about it at all.
Like it's actually kind of seems a little degenerate now, but and I'm sure there was an element of that back then.
There always was.
We've all seen
sure, in the 20s.
Yeah.
20s, forget it.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hot mess.
Yeah.
Right. But what was shown seemed a little more I don't know, just cool, I guess. I don't know what the word is.
It's so bizarre to think back because everybody smoked, everybody drank.
Yeah.
And it was just part of the culture in Hollywood.
Right.
And I think because of that Hollywood culture, it spread, talk about influencers, it spread across the whole United States. Everybody smoked and drank.
Yeah.
And now nobody hardly drinks anymore,
or smokes.
And certainly not smoke.
No. Yeah.
But even the New York bars, these New York bars that have been, in operation for 150 years, most of them are gone. I read an article about it.
Really?
These old Irish bars, they couldn't have
Wow.
it was either the taxes or just.
Oh, yeah.
But people don't hang out in bars anymore like they used to.
Right.
I don't know if Cheers could ever get off the ground today.
Nobody could
TVC.
relate to it.
Nobody could
Exactly.
relate to this bar culture because it just doesn't exist anymore.
Now, and it's such a shame too, because there's something cool about going, like, especially if you have like a neighborhood bar where you go to all the time, and Norm, like, Cheers, like everybody knows
exactly.
your name,
Everybody knows your name,
and
Right.
and it's like a second family or a second group of friends or something.
Yeah.
There's something nice about that.
There is, yeah. But the young people coming up today are not. They're not
because they're
big drinkers.
suspicious of everybody they meet.
They
That's
just
the thing,
don't go to bars.
They
It's not part of their culture. It's
No.
not part of their routine anymore.
And I, as we're talking here, I'm just going to throw this out because I don't even have a firm idea of what I'm about to say. But it seems like, there didn't seem to be that much insecurity among young people of them hitting a mark. Like it seems like now you hear about people on the internet hoping to be so-and-so or being that person, and the insecurity that it is stirring up. I mean, I remember like being in high school or going out to Los Angeles, we thought we were cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
God knows how we were probably geeks.
Probably
but
nerds, yeah.
Nobody could tell us that. I mean, we had bell bottoms and we were cool. I mean, I don't know that there's that kind of confidence now in young people.
There isn't, because they're raised seeing everybody else living these amazing lives, and they look at their real life and they're like, oh my God, like I'll never be that. They come out of the gate insecure for false reasons, I believe, because like you're right. When I was I just found old tapes that I made of my band in high school, and we thought we were on our way to rock stardom.
I love it,
and it is horrendous.
Oh.
It is awful. And then I found recordings a few weeks later of the band I had after high school. And in this band, I was asked to join, and these guys were all, I was 19, these guys were all early to mid 20s, and I had known them since I was in high school. They were like the musicians that all the aspiring musicians wanted to play with, and they were really good. They were known as like the best drummer in the area, the best bassist in the area, and I got asked to be in the band with them, and I was like, that means I'm good, and wow, and all that. And then I listened to that recording, and I was like, the frig is going on in here? Like, first of all, are we playing the same song? Like, what is happening? And I couldn't believe it, because in my memory, that was like, that was it, Yeah. It was awful. And you're right. When we were teenagers, we thought we were so cool, but we were we didn't have the rest of the world to compare it to.
Correct.
Now they do.
Yeah, good point.
And everything that they see is not cultivated. What's the word they use? No, not. Maybe it is cultivated. It's manufactured. It's made to look like everything is great. Like they don't, they see this, and this is, I think young girls are most susceptible to this. They see one of these female influencers that they follow, and she's on her Learjet, and she's like heading off to the Bahamas for the weekend, but meanwhile they don't know that there's a place out in California and probably other places where you can rent the interior of a Learjet. It's made for movies. It's not even a real Learjet, or if they do have a real Learjet, it's just sitting in front of a hangar for you to go, and for $1,000 an hour or whatever it is, you could take all the pictures you want in front of this thing,
or free,
free. Well, I don't know. And then and then you can go and say it's whatever you want it to be. And so now I'm this like 16, 17-year-old girl thinking, what am I going to do with my life? Let's go through here. And it's like, oh my God, look at her. She's only 19 and she's got a Learjet already because she has this like this deal with Oil of Olay. Is that even still a thing? I don't even know. But it's that's why I think these girls and guys too, they're coming out now of the gate just completely insecure and wrecked. They're ruined. I got wrecked from living life. Life beat me down. But I started out up here thinking the world has no idea. Like, they're so lucky they're about to meet me, you know? And then the world met me and they're like, get the fuck out of here, you. And then, you know, it took 20 years, but finally that was beaten out of me to the point where I was like, okay, I'm humble. Just please, let me make a living.
That's life learning things. Those are important to learn.
But my point is that they come out, when they leave high school, before they leave high school, they don't believe anything will work for them, so they don't even try. I believed anything I touched would work for me as long as I tried. Yeah. And there's a big difference now. They don't believe that. It's a
different world, too. We like the show business was much smaller, like when I started.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have, I mean, you think that having more cable channels and things offer more work. Yeah. But
the Wild West.
It was the Wild West. When I went out, I got very, very lucky. I met my first agent with ICM, my first manager. I got the first job I ever went out on. But it was through these contacts, you know, that ICM worked with Quinn Martin. Right. And I remember the first interview I went out on, I had an argument with the casting director because he was asking me about what's the difference between acting in a play and a TV show. Well, I had never done TV, but I had an opinion, and I was going to tell him. So I got out, and my manager said, how did it go? I said, terrible. I hate that man. He goes, I said, you know, he was arguing with me, and he said, you got the part. I go, he's great. I love him, you know. But it was, you know, you just got lucky.
Yeah.
And from there, it snowballed.
Yeah.
It just snowballed. I mean, I was just very, very fortunate. I found myself working with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall on the Odd Couple. Yes. Yeah. And, you know, Three's Company. And so I worked with all of these.
Doing what? What'd you do on Three's Company? Oh, I loved that show when I was a kid.
I was Brenda, the Human Blender. It was a thing called the Handcuff Show. And he's handcuffed to Suzanne Summers. And her cousin had the key. And he wants to still go on the date with Brenda at the Regal Beagle.
Yeah.
And so she's still handcuffed. She's sitting at another table. He's got his arm behind him.
I remember this episode.
Right?
And
that's
she's
me.
At the no kidding.
Yes, that's me.
And oh, my God. Yes. I have to go back. I mean, I remember this episode from literally at being a kid watching the reruns of this.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm going to have to go and find that now.
What's amazing about that particular thing is that it's physical comedy. So he has this glass of wine that she pulls her hand a certain way, and the wine comes right over my boobs. And then they both jump up and they're patting my boobs, and I say, I don't know what kind of girl you think I am, but you know. Anyway, but here's the interesting thing about all of that.
I remember that gag. That was so good.
It was, but we did it in one take in front of a live audience.
Really?
So here's like what I'm trying to say is when you start working and you're working with people that you grew up watching. Well, when we were doing that show that week, Mary Tyler Moore came over we were shooting at CBS, and I'm standing there and I look over and there's like Mary Tyler Moore, and she goes, how's it going? And I said, well, I don't think it's going very well. I said, there's a lot of tension on the set. And I said, I don't think they like me. And she goes, oh, no, it's not you. She said, it's something else. It's a contractual thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, oh, okay. And so the other part of that story is I mentioned Jack Klugman, The Odd Couple. So Lucille Ball, it was at Paramount, which she owned that studio at one time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so she comes over on the set. These are so crazy stories because there's another aspect to this too. So she comes over and she goes, hi, kid, how you doing? And I said, oh, I'm fine, Lucy. And she said, you're doing great. And I said, thank you. Well, I was walking to lunch one day. This big black Lincoln comes, and the streets at Paramount are very tight. And so I'm plastered against this wall, and this car is honking its horn. And the window comes down, and she goes, hi, honey, it's Lucille Ball. Remember me? And of course, yes.
Remember me?
Remember me, yes, before I was even in kindergarten, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, fast forward to me doing Three's Company. She was going to do Best of Three's Company. She chose my segment.
Really?
And I couldn't figure out for the longest time why, but it was physical comedy.
Yeah.
They throw this thing at me.
bonbon thing.
The
with her,
bonbon or the bread backing her up. You know, it was physical comedy, and that's why.
I remember that. That's so funny. Not only do I remember that bit, but I remember the Best of Three's Company with her as the host, and she's walking through the set.
So you know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely.
And she's like, all these wonderful things happen here.
So now we're doing the Odd Couple, right? And it's a week-long rehearsal, and suddenly somebody says John Lennon is coming to see the rehearsal.
Oh.
Right? I mean, we grew up like trying to get backstage to see the Beatles. We had our little ticket, $3, $3. And we were sent away for it. And John Lennon is coming to see, not me, but I'm in something that John Lennon is sitting in the audience to see. I mean, do you see what a strange wheel that is?
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's totally wacky.
Yeah. What's also funny to me is how, okay. I was born in 78. Mm-hmm. So I remember watching TV as a kid. Lucille Ball was on as an old lady and as young Lucy. Right. And Dean Martin was on as an old man. I don't remember the Dean Martin show. I don't think I caught reruns of that at that point. Frank Sinatra, of course, Frank Sinatra is like God, so everybody knows Frank Sinatra, but he was an old man. Right. And I just remember these people being there. Like, they're like God. They came before me. They'll always exist. You don't see them as, you don't get it. You're a little kid. What do you know, right? Right. And then they die. Right. And you kind of feel like, oh shit, that's kind of weird, because like I equate them with my grandparents because it's their generation, a lot of these people. Right. So they're all around the same age and everything, and now they're all gone. But then you get a little older and you start to dive into the work of these people when they're younger. Right. And I remember at first, I'm like, why do I have a hard time believing that these people were ever young? Right. You know what I mean? Because you saw them as older people. Because you saw them as older people first, and then you go back and you see it. Now I get it because, now I understand that everybody who was ever old was once young. So, it makes sense. But it's got to be really weird to grow up watching someone. I mean, on a smaller level, I've interviewed a bunch of the guys from the movie Gettysburg, and I grew up watching that. Like I told you, incessantly watched it and everything. Right. And it's when Bo and I go out to dinner, I'm like, this is really weird once in a while. It'll just like hit me. I'm like, this is so strange, because I was like, why is this idiot so obsessed with flapjacks? and now I'm sitting having dinner with him, and we're making jokes about the flapjacks in Small Mountains. Right. And then I got to interview Tom Berenger, even though it was over the phone. I'm like, I'm listening to his voice, and I'm looking at the monitor, and we're flashing pictures of him as Longstreet and everything. And I'm like, this is just so weird, But so I get that in a way, but not that, way where you're actually working with them. Yeah. That's got to be crazy. It was crazy because, I grew up with Don Knotts, on as Barney Fife, and he was in Three's Company. All these people left me notes too, which I did not save. Like, I work with Fonzie, and Fonzie wrote me a note, didn't save it.
No, you don't. When you're young, you don't care.
You don't think it's.
I guess that was my other point. Is like when I was working with these people, because I went to the American Academy. I took it seriously. I didn't sit there and think, oh, I'm going to be discovered. Right. So I just was working with these people and thought, this is what you do. Right. Because at the Academy, they said, go out to Hollywood and get into television. In other words, don't stay here and get plays. And I just went out and I just thought, oh, this is what you do, and you work with these people. But it was never like, oh my God, or I'm nervous or freaked out. Yeah. So now besides the acting, you produce and you direct. Mm-hmm. You're working on a documentary now. Yeah. But we don't have a title for it yet, or you're not going to tell us the title. Right. Okay. But it's roughly, what is it about? I started it a few years ago, and we were down in at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Andrew had donated money, and so they had Rosa Parks there at the time. And I saw this wall of all of these people who had been killed, and no one was ever prosecuted. And I was so moved. I just couldn't believe it when you see that number of people. Mm. And so I called Ed Asner, and I said, Ed, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. So I started doing research, and a name kept coming across of someone who was investigating these crimes, and they were part of the Justice Department.
Okay.
And so what caught my attention is that the Justice Department under Eisenhower, they didn't know what was out there.
Right.
Like for
as far as the crimes go.
Well, and civil rights. I mean, yes, you had the Brown versus the Board of Education and all of that, but they didn't know how far their power stretched. And so I started contacting people from the Justice Department, and this documentary unfolds into what their powers are. At that time, under Eisenhower, Kennedy, I interviewed Nicholas Katzenbach. I interviewed fiery Fred Shuttlesworth, who was on Life magazine. All of these people were still alive, and I got the last interview with them.
Oh, wow.
And so it's an amazing story about people. It's really the American experience.
Yeah.
And so they tell their story and how they got involved either with the Justice Department or with civil rights. And so when I started this, everybody was going, oh, the Justice Department, what a snoozer. Well, it's front and center right now.
Yeah,
And it's just as important now knowing what the Justice Department is and what it isn't, because I think that the average guy like me doesn't really know. And we think that they have powers or can do things or are at the beck and call of other people.
Right.
And they are not.
They're not, no.
And the man that I focus it on, he was a Republican, but he served under Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Johnson. And they even brought him back to prosecute Nixon because they felt that he was maybe the last ethical man in politics.
Who is that?
His name was John Doerr.
Okay.
And he's like this hidden gem of a person that I spent so many hours with him.
He's still alive?
He died. He died at the age of 90.
Oh, wow.
But he prosecuted the Mississippi burning trials.
Okay.
I mean, and he lost a lot of cases, but we talk about that, of why that is necessary. So it's
why it's necessary to lose?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, you mean for your personal development or for the
Everything.
sake of law and order and all that?
Everything.
Really?
Of course.
Oh, I can't wait for this to come out. This is going to be interesting.
No, but here's the other part. You know, unless you're doing a film like Women Who Flew for the RAF, in England or something.
Right.
Something like that is educational, so you point your finger and say, that's where we need to go. This, it's like, I think that it was... one of these wonderful documentarians, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but he describes a documentary as an onion that you peel it back and it will tell you what it is if you get out of the way. And so that's what happened with this. I didn't even know I was directing it. I was doing like the research, doing the interviews. You will never see me on camera. It's their response to my question.
Right.
But I delve into all of this and I get out of the way and they tell me their story. And it's the most fascinating thing because I don't know your story and you don't know mine. But if you get out of the way, they'll tell you.
How long have you been working on this?
Several years.
When's it going to be done?
Well, I'm now, as you know, freed up a little bit with my personal life that I can focus more on it. But Andrew was, encouraging me 1,000%. And I interview people across the board from the Justice Department to the FBI to lawyers to the people involved with SNCC.
What's SNCC?
SNCC was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Okay.
They went into the South and urged people to vote. I interviewed a man who was kidnapped by the Klan.
Really?
Oh, I have the most. It's not me. I want to be very clear. This has nothing to do with me.
No, I get it.
It has to do with everybody involved in this story. And
that's so fascinating. I love talking to people about. I mean, I do this history show, and I love the history of this town and the battle and all that stuff. But more and more lately, I've been like, I think I've hit a ceiling with it because it's a niche subject, and I don't think I can take it much higher. And I'm starting to think of other things to do, not instead of, but in addition to this.
Right.
And one thing I've been wanting to do is I don't know if you're familiar with the Joe Rogan podcast, but like,
Sure.
a Joe Rogan style show where I just talk to interesting people and hear their stories. I love hearing these stories. I've loved this interview with you because this is probably one of my favorite interviews because it's all over the place, but you got such great stories to tell.
Thank you.
And I get what you're saying. Like you just let the story tell itself, and you don't, it's not about you. I mean, I sort of kind of make it a little bit about me during these interviews, but like for the most part, I don't really care about me. I'm interested in what the person has to say.
Right.
So I like that. And that sounds, what do you have, like an idea when you're going to have it done or?
Well, I do. I mean, I think that it's important, especially in today's climate, that people really have, an idea of what our government really is. Yeah. And I think you and I were talking about, politics, and I think that, I'm more of a centralist. Mm-hmm. I see sides. Could see myself voting for a Republican person that I thought was good for the country. Sure. And I could see a Democrat good for the country. Right. I think that we were watching Ken Burns, and you go back to Jefferson and Washington. I mean, at heart, when people had disagreements, I think that what a lot of it was what was good for the country. Right. Now, they all had egos. We know that. And we all know that, people play politics. But out of those men, we were lucky enough to form a country, and like Washington said, if we can keep it, and I think that needs to be our goal, is if we can keep it, and how do we do that? Because we educate ourselves into what we actually have, and we don't have civics anymore in school. No, so children don't even know. Like one thing I learned, is that why is it important for local elections? Mm-hmm. Local elections are important because that's where your street is paved. Yes. This is where your clean water comes from. It's not the federal government. No. So you go, why should I vote for local people? Because they are your bread and butter on a daily basis. Yep. And we don't know that. No, we don't. I mean, even as adults, we don't know it. No, we don't. And I know. And that's the brilliance of the evil geniuses that got us thinking it's the other way around, that it's the federal government that's most important and not the local government. Because you're right. If you look at election results, millions, hundreds, tens of millions of people vote for the federal elections. Nobody votes. Nobody votes locally. It's like hundreds of people. And how important it is to have support your local sheriff. How important that. Yeah. Unbelievably, and most people don't know it. No, they don't. They don't know how the system works. And you're right. I remember we had civics in 8th grade, and I went to a Catholic school. Right. Public school kids didn't have it. Right. I went to a private school. Yeah. Yeah. They did, because they taught us, it was a Catholic school. So, of course, we had to thank God that we were born in the United States. Look at the way the kids are, or, people are in other countries, and look at and this is what we have. And so they compared us to the rest of the world. Now, again, this was during the end of the Cold War. So, sure. But still, like now it's like, it's the other way around. It's like this freedom stuff. You don't want this. You want oppression, you don't want to, it's too much to worry about, having freedom. This country is right, evil. Let us take care of, so it's very weird. The whole situation is very strange. Down right now. We just need to be reasonable. Number one, be reasonable. Yeah, good luck finding reasonable people nowadays. And even our own anticipations of ourselves. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because my dad worked very, very hard. And in high school, I was teaching, I was lucky enough to teach modeling. And I was making more than my father, but I didn't know it. Really? Because they never said a word. They never told us what they had to give up for us. We always had clean sheets. We always had food. They never said, don't eat that. They came up the hard way. They came up through the Depression. They didn't have a trust fund. Right. But they were not bitter people. They weren't bitter of what they didn't have. They were glad for what they had, for what they accomplished. I think our house probably cost $3,200. Ours was $8,500. Right. Wow. And they bought it in 1952. Right. Yeah. So was your father in World War II? No, because he had children, and at that point they would not. And I think that also my father had some sort of thing where he drank water and it was,
Bad water.
and it took him out. He
Oh.
tried to join, but I don't know what it was.
Like a parasite or something?
I don't typhoid or I don't know what
Oh,
I don't know what
geez.
people were drinking because it was
Right.
it was farmland, and so you drink out of a stream.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so whatever it was,
Wow.
but
And that's another thing that we're out of touch with. The earth,
correct.
life, death.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician.
Oh wow.
And I'm not particularly one of these people that's into the dark and macabre, but once in a while, I'll delve out of curiosity, more of like just how things work type of a way.
Right.
And so I've watched a lot of her videos, and she makes the point that we're so detached from death, and it's a normal thing. And she was doing a Q&A, and somebody asked can you get sick from touching a dead body?
Oh.
And she's like, no, it's a dead body. Depending on how long it's been laying there. But, your mother just dies right in front of you. It's not like, oh, God, life is gone. Suddenly it's contaminated. You can kiss her. You can hug her. You can touch her hair. You can still do all that stuff. And she makes the point that we're
the feeling of cold clay.
Yeah, well.
Right.
But the point she's making is that, it used to be mom dies. You prepare her, you put her in the front parlor, everybody comes to the house, and then you walk her down to the cemetery and you bury her.
Right.
Right. And then it was a little bit more formalized with a funeral home and a hearse that, they always had hearses.
Became law.
Right.
Well, and then it became law. And then, you used to bury mom and dad and everybody in the backyard.
Or in the farm.
Or if you're on the farm. Right. And now it's like they're dead. Back away. Everybody get out of the house, call the authorities. They come, they sweep the body away.
Wow.
And they go to the funeral home.
30 grand later.
30 grand later, right? And you're looking at this person that doesn't even look like the person in a box. And then they whisked away to the cemetery, and you do a little thing there at the grave. You bury them, and then they're done. And you're detached from the whole thing. You're now a spectator in the death of a loved one, where it used to be you were very much a part of it. You were as their earthly family, you're passing them on to their heavenly family and all this stuff, and that's all gone now.
Yeah,
and drinking from a stream. I mean, I've actually had a parasite. I wouldn't drink from a stream unless I absolutely had to.
I think, I got one in South Africa. I mean, I had to watch
I'd believe it, and they're awful.
Well, I was reading my grandmother's obituary, and they had two people sit up with her all night. Two men. They named the men who sat with my grandmother all night.
You mean
after
as she
died.
laid in state?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was how close.
Oh, that's why they call it a wake.
Yeah, that's how close that relationship, was.
Yeah.
So,
well, so you know what I'm talking about then.
I
So,
do. I do. And as you know, recently I had to deal with Andrew's death.
So let's get.
I know it's
beautiful
very,
segue.
Very
Okay.
difficult to ask somebody about that. I get that.
Yeah, no, it is. But now, so what were the circumstances? I mean, I like I said, I know that he had passed away, but I didn't know the circumstances of it, and I still don't. So you're going to tell me. Well,
I think that I'm kind of with you. I am kind of mystified at what happened, to tell you the truth.
Okay,
it's not. There's no finite point to it. We were on vacation with friends, and he wasn't feeling that well. We had him checked out, and they said, "We just want to take you to the hospital to make sure, we want to run some tests." And kind of when he got into the ambulance, I had this sense of like something was wrong. Like, no, it was like a premonition.
And this was in Paris?
I was in France, right? And I was like, no, get out of there, get out. And so we go to this hospital. We were traveling with a group of friends. We were supposed to leave for Spain.
Okay.
And my friend said, well, all right, we'll just take your luggage with us. We're traveling on. We're going to take the luggage with us and we'll meet you. And they simply kept running tests saying that they couldn't release him. He was on a heart medication to keep his heart in rhythm. And so I kept saying, are you giving him his heart medication? Yes, it's in the IV. Well, it was a certain kind of medication that even in Nashville, you had to drive around. It didn't seem right to me. And so we tried to get him to another hospital, like an American hospital, because he just kept getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And we take him to this other hospital in Paris, and you know, I just tried everything you could think of. And I think that the French, what I didn't know is they have an idea about the medical system where if you're over 65, you know, it might be your time to go.
Oh, my God.
And I had no idea that was their attitude towards people. And Andrew was 86. Now, the crazy part is that they all knew who he was.
Yeah.
So they would come in, and the guy who would wheel him out to do tests says, he's a great actor. And I said, yes. And he goes, I've seen him. And it was such a strange dynamic of, yes, he's a great actor, but take him and do something and help. And you were just, you know, you were in a place where you needed help, but there was no help. So,
oh my God,
I can't tell you exactly. He died of natural causes. Yes. His heart gave out. Yes. And I don't know whether it was because he was not receiving medication or was.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, you can be philosophical and say, when your time comes, it comes. And you can be philosophical and say all kinds of things. The great thing that Andrew would have absolutely loved, when he would go to Paris, he would go and see Jim Morrison's grave.
Yeah.
Because he knew Jim Morrison.
Oh, really?
And
That's another one of my favorites.
I think we have a picture.
He knew Elvis, too.
He knew Elvis. So he would go to Paris, and I think we have a picture of Andrew, you know, in front of Jim Morrison's grave. But he died on Halloween in Paris. And I think that he would have, if he had to go, he would have loved it because, I mean, it's so Quentin Tarantino. Him dying on Halloween,
right?
You know, in Paris. So it was all kinds of crazy. It was a mixed blessing. I think that people can go much worse, but you're not ready for that person to go at all.
No.
But the odd thing was, I did not know this, but when you die in a foreign country, they want your marriage certificate. They want your birth certificate. Well, of course, we're not traveling with our marriage certificate. So I tell you that because I'm having this thing at City Hall a few hours after he dies, and I get back to the hotel, and the phone is ringing, and I never answer phone numbers that I'm not familiar with. And I pick up, and it's the Hollywood Reporter. And I'm trying to process. It's like, you're what? And they knew within hours that he had died, you know.
How does that happen?
I don't know. I mean,
Internet.
But how does anybody know if she hasn't even told anybody yet?
No, and it was.
It wasn't official.
It wasn't
record.
even on. It wasn't even on the radar in Paris with the City Hall.
Right.
You know, I don't know. Suddenly, it was in the London Mirror. It was in Spain. You just simply you don't know, and you're shocked with this thing that just happened of somebody dying, and 36 years of being with them, and you're going, wow. I mean, you're from California, and you already know. Are you serious?
Right.
So
there's spies everywhere,
and it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, these people are not bad people, and the guy was not bad. He was lovely. It was we want to get this out. We want to have a tribute to Andrew. But it's just on the other side of that is your own emotions of like, what just happened?
Well, and that's what I'm thinking is like, would I have the nerve to call a widow 3 hours after her husband died and say, hey, sorry about your husband. Can we talk about it for an article?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is just so cold, but I guess somebody's got to do it. I mean, I don't know how to.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly.
It was probably somebody from the hospital.
I don't know.
Guaranteed.
It had to be.
I mean, I would. Again, I'm still going through grief, so it's not like it goes away. I mean, people would say, "Oh, you're going to get over it in 6 months." Really?
No way.
Who said that?
I've had people say that.
Really?
No. It's really strange, and it's like unthinking. But
Yes.
you don't get over a 36-year marriage in 6 months.
Not only is it
not
unthinking,
even in 6 years.
But not only is it unthinking, it's also telling you a lot about that person. Because if they could get over the death of a loved one in 6 months, get over, and that's.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about you. I mean, if you died, I'd be 15 or
7
20,
months.
20 minutes, I would be inconsolable.
Go to
but then I'd
Starbucks.
move on.
We'd be back at Starbucks, like, could I have a latte, please?
Right. It's like, oh, Matt just died. He's like, oh, yeah, that's
Can I
right.
have a latte? Well, but you know what I discover, I think it is that it's uncomfortable. And people first of all, they don't want you in that condition.
Right.
So, and they want you to move on because I think it scares people. It scares them that it might happen to them.
Sure.
And so it's not that they're bad people. I think that a lot of us, until you know what somebody goes through, how can you know? How can you know?
And that old. I hope you didn't hear this, but I'm sure you've heard somebody say like life is for the living.
My mother used to say it all the time.
Yeah.
My grandmother did. Yeah.
Right. And you got, in other words, yes, it's sad that so-and-so died, but, you're still here. So you have to go on and make the best of your life. And that's what they're basically saying there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Like we see ourselves in everybody else. Right. And so we all know that we're going to lose someone close to us throughout our lives. And the idea of our lives ending because we can't get over the loss of someone else is
huge.
Horrifying.
It's huge.
It is to me, at least. I mean, just paralyzing grief is horrifying.
It's huge.
So, I mean, I think they're talking to you as much as they're talking to themselves when they say this stuff.
It's frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we all do it, and that's how the human race keeps going. Is we do that.
Unless you experience, I mean, yes, our grandparents die, our parents die. But your whole world, is different when somebody that you live with for 36 years is gone.
Yeah.
Your daily existence is gone. But again, he was a fabulous person.
And yet, like I said, I caught a glimpse of him, but from what I hear from everybody else, like he was just one of these guys that everybody loved.
Yeah.
And how difficult was it to? I always wondered this when someone dies in a foreign country, like how hard is it to get the body back?
It's terrible. I mean, that was another thing. After the Hollywood Reporter, the consulate called me and said, "You're an American citizen. We're here for you. We can get you back to the U.S." I mean, our diplomats in France were like right on it.
Nice.
And so you just went, oh my God, no matter what, I've got them.
Right.
I mean, that part was great.
Yeah.
And again, all of the press around the world, on Twitter, everybody was absolutely wonderful to Andrew. And what was so interesting about that Hollywood Reporter is they said, can you just give us a statement about Andrew? And I just said he was the sweetest prince. And he was.
Yeah.
He was.
Oh, thank you for doing this. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting this. And thank you for talking about all that stuff. And Bo, thank you for setting it up. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for listening and your continued support. And we will talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
That was really good.
I had people cleaning out the office the other day, and I don't know what they did with my tissue box. And